Thank you so much to Green Chef for sponsoring today's video and making it easier to eat clean and help me live a healthier lifestyle. Green Chef is the #1 meal kit for eating clean, with dinners that work for you and not the other way around. They have tons of delicious, nutritious recipes with clean ingredients like organic fruits and vegetables, lean proteins, and whole grains. They also limit processed ingredients, which is awesome, and they don't use any artificial colors or sweeteners so that you can feel great about the food you eat. The best part is that ingredients come pre-portioned and often pre-chopped with sauces pre-made in-house, and all the food comes well organized in little kits, which is super convenient. Personally, I just love the boxes because it helps keep meal times exciting, and it saves me loads of time looking up recipes because everything is already ready to go. One of the meals I received and made was the teriyaki glazed cauliflower bowls that you can see right here. Not only was this literally ready in under 30 minutes, but the flavor profile and the strong umami flavor taste was so good. You can go to greenchef.com and use my code MelReads50 to get 50% off plus free shipping on your box. Don't say I didn't tell you. TikTok, let's talk about it. Despite its many critiques throughout the past few years, it's one of those platforms that has only gotten increasingly more popular the more time has gone by, and the same can be said about its book subsection, booktok. It has been the talk and the reservation of many. If you literally look up booktok books on YouTube, you will see countless of lists doing exactly what I'm here to do today, and it is all dissecting booktok's taste and whether the recommendations are truly worth it. It has been featured in countless newspapers and magazines. It is literally a behemoth to behold. Like, I'm actually quite impressed, especially as somebody who had a lot of reservations towards the beginning about booktok and whether or not it was actually a good thing or a bad thing, or whether the community was toxic or not toxic. I think we can apply all of those parameters to any social media platform and say the exact same thing. What I can say though, which I think is the point a lot of people have been talking about for the past few years, myself included, is that you never really know what you're getting with TikTok book recommendations. You never really know if you're getting a really good one, if you're getting a kind of iffy one, or if one of those throwbacks they keep talking about is even worth your time. And I think TikTok is one of those platforms that, because its conception has been much of a newer thing rather than YouTube that has been around for ages and ages, it seems like at this point, TikTok went through its baby phase. It started picking out books that BookTube saw years and years ago, like We Were Liars and The Selection and Divergent and The Hunger Games, and it started out reading some of those classic YA books that we were reading 10 years ago, and it slowly but surely has kind of caught up to current times to the point where it seems like we're all now talking about the same books. I am here with like a comprehensive list of 10 books that I've seen all around booktok, that I've seen people talk about, that I personally think are worth your time just based on my own personal subjective experience, commenting on other people's subjective experience. It's all just, you know, take it with a grain of salt. And it's just one more for the bunch of other videos that have done this already. So she is neither original nor or captivating. We're just here. So let's get into it. I was pleasantly surprised to see this in many different videos on TikTok and see it be featured in a lot of these popular booktok books, sort of things that people do on the platform, because this is personally one of my favorite books, and it's one of those books that I think I've appreciated more and more as time has gone on, and that is Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. I read this literally in 2020, so it's been a while, but initially I read this book and I kind of let the predictability that I found at the time deter me a little bit from giving it a higher rating, but the complexity of the characters and the character construction itself is something that I have truly not forgotten as time has gone on, which is why the more I think about this book, the more I love it. Stories like that, whether it's in film or in books or, you know, whatever sort of media you're consuming, I find that to be the best kind of media you can consume. And so in this one, we have got Noemi Tawala, who receives a letter from her cousin, her newlywed cousin, and her cousin's very much in distress. She's being very cryptic and paranoid, and she is very much seeking her cousin's help. And so Noemi, perhaps against a lot of people's intuitions or even perceptions of her, because she very much lives in the glitz and glam of Mexico at the time, she is kind of like an unlikely candidate for it, despite the fact that she is unafraid, incredibly smart, and incredibly tenacious. She goes to High Place, which is the mansion her cousin has moved in with her newlywed Englishman, and she finds some terrible things while she is there and make some really, really terrifying discoveries while she is there as well. And it is a gothic horror at its finest, meaning that it is in its setting and in its tone very romantic without necessarily highlighting the romance aspect of it all. The atmosphere building in this is absolutely impeccable. And again, it really is just the characters that kind of make the story. I think like any good gothic story, depending on obviously its inception and the time where it was written, kind of raises the question of, is it the people who are kind of out of it, or is it the house they are living in? Is it actually paranormal? Is it not paranormal? It's a very compulsive read. It's so good. Another one that I don't talk about enough, despite absolutely loving the experience with it, and not only is it comedic timing really good, but also the sense of found family is beautiful, and the journey itself of this character in his loneliness to suddenly feeling just whole and accompanied and love is so gorgeous that I really do need to talk about it more, and that is The House in the Cerulean Sea. It's one of those books that is pitched as middle grade for adults, and it really is. We follow our main character, Linus Baker, who is a caseworker for a Department of Magical Youth, and he is contacted by upper management, and he is assigned to this very specific case in a remote island where there seems to be a threat that could potentially end the world. When he gets there and meets the caretaker of said threat, he realizes that these are kids with magical abilities who have been alienated from everybody else because of the threats they potentially pose. And Linus initially as a character is somebody who leads a very lonely life. He lives by himself, he has his cat, really doesn't like to interact with other people. It's not something that he does on a day-to-day basis, and whether by choice or by circumstance, he inevitably just ends up feeling lonely half the time. And so we go from a very sort of dark, desolate, very depressing mindset to somebody who is suddenly sort of discovering the joys of company and love and companionship and family, which are all things that he doesn't really get to experience as the book starts. And so I love how the tone of the book kind of changes as you go and it takes on a more hopeful note. The audiobook is also really, really good. I kind of listened to this and then read it physically. I kind of kept going back and forth at the time when I was reading this. It just made for such a wonderful experience. Next up, I hope this isn't a surprise, Vin is also here because she's very excited about this, aren't you, Bubbas? But I loved Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. This was, I think, a recipe for success for me right from the get-go. The fact that it was low stakes and set to be cozy fantasy at that. I think as long as books are marketed as low stakes and I know what I'm getting myself into, I can really enjoy them, and this was no different. And in this one, we follow Viv, who is an orc, and she is done with the bloodshed, she is done with the violence, she is done with the killing, and she just wants to make coffee. She wants to have her coffee shop and reinvent herself in a world that keeps telling her she has to be a very specific type of person because of how she looks and what type of creature she is. And so she decides to end her life of violence and assassination and become a coffee maker and an entrepreneur and to open her own business. And so we see her embarking on this journey to figure out the inner workings of owning your own business and enlisting the right people to help. And in the midst of that, she ends up making lovely friends like Thimble and Tundri and Cal and making this really beautiful found family. I know there's a game people recommend that is very similar to this. I think it's called Coffee Talk on the Switch. I really want to try it out because apparently you can serve customers coffee and hear their own personal like stories and backgrounds and whatnot. And that is exactly what this book is like. It genuinely does feel like a cozy game. It feels almost like an animated movie, and I just love it so much. It brought me so much comfort. There's just something so humane about her attempt to reinvent herself and make a name out of herself in the way that she wants it. Not how people want it, not how people dictate it. So although the book is low stakes in terms of like an actual conflict on a fantasy, fantastical setting, I think the stakes really are in Viv as a person. I think the stakes are high for her in terms of making this work and really putting her, you know, her money where her mouth is. And so I absolutely loved this. It was so good. And Thimble absolutely stole my heart. I fucking love that rat to bits. And if you haven't seen the Wraithmarked edition of this, I'm gonna get this. So I better be in line first. Y'all better not steal this copy away from me because I am dying to own this special edition, despite loads of controversy around this book, because I think a lot of people have said like so many things about this book. I ended up really, really enjoying it. I think it depicts that sort of mental haze that can happen when you're more in your anxious, depressed mindset very, very well, where you kind of lose all sense of self and where you can't really distinguish one thing from the other because it all sort of blurs together under this mantle of sadness and anxiety. And that is A Year of Rest and Relaxation by Tessa Moshfegh. What's curious about this book is that we never find out the name of the main character. Like, the main character remains nameless throughout the entirety of the story, but we get to see probably one of the most intimate accounts of mental health I've probably read about, and that is exactly why I enjoyed it so much. This is a character that, you know, appearances wise, the way that she presents herself, it seems like she should be happy. Like, there should be nothing wrong. She graduated from a very prestigious college. She's got the boyfriend and the friends and the nice apartment and the money, and she just seems to be doing very, very well. You would see her and you would never expect anything to be going on silently, invisibly, but there is, and in fact, she wants to solve, hopefully, all of those things by inducing herself into a year of sleep, into this medicated haze where she truly believes that if she just sleeps and relaxes and rests for an entire year, one day she will magically wake up and all of her problems will be solved. And I think it really does the navigation of avoidance as a theme, as a topic so well. There are, I think, getting abstract, cyclically, there are many things you cannot avoid. There are many things that need to be closed cycle-wise, that need to be healed cycle-wise. And I think this book does a great job at really navigating the, if you try to avoid it, what would happen? And how inevitably all of these things kind of circle back in a way that you have to confront them. You have to face the music at some point, and you really have to be aware of why these things happened, the who, what, whys of the world, and figure out how to heal from that. And so I love the fact that our main character kind of goes through that journey without expecting it because of the decision she has made, and so she probably ends up facing all of these things in a way that she never expected, she probably would have kept putting off. And again, we see all of that through a medicated haze, a person who is very clearly hurting and who has very clearly suffered a lot of trauma in the course of her life. So it's a very mental health heavy book. It's a very sad book, but all in all, it is a book that I tremendously enjoyed as somebody who has gone through depressive periods, as somebody who has generalized anxiety, as somebody who continuously battles all of that on a day-to-day basis and still has to function, you know, semi-okay in order for daily things, important things to happen. And so I loved this. It's Caraval. Honestly, TikTok really made me read between TikTok and Masera Caroli. I'm seeing you. I see you. Between the two of them, they really made me want to read everything Stephanie Garber related. Of course, the fact that Liv talks about it too only made me want to read it even more. And then my patrons were also talking about it. And so it was just an amalgamation of everything put together. I think I read it at the right time too, where I really just needed the escapism and just the live, laugh, and love vibes out of books, and not anything overly deep, overly complicated, overly explained, overly really anything. Following the Dragna sisters, Scarlett and Donatella, who have dreamt of seeing Caraval for a really, really long time. In fact, Miss Scarlett has been writing to the Game Master for years and years and years without ever receiving a response that'll allow her to come to see Caraval. And under the very mean, watchful eye of her father, who is extremely cruel, there are very little to no chances that she will ever get the opportunity of seeing Caraval to begin with. And so in an attempt to get some semblance of freedom, after finally receiving an invitation for Caraval, Donatella decides to enlist the help of a mysterious sailor and literally whisk Scarlett away from the island they reside in into Caraval, and things don't go as expected. Now Scarlett finds herself on this journey of having to save her sister, and the story goes from there. It was really, really entertaining. I think it really kept me on my toes. It sort of is predictable YA without necessarily being predictable YA. Like, there are things that you can predict, but it really is just kind of a decoy because there are other things happening in the background that I personally did not even imagine, that I could not even fathom. I think what I truly, truly enjoy about Stephanie Garber's books, it really is the atmosphere, the purple prose. It really is the fact that her writing is extremely whimsical and lyrical, and it builds this world so well that it just feels so remote and away from what we see on a day-to-day basis that it just makes you feel like that love for fantasy. I really enjoyed it. Next up, I have got a book that I think was one of my first few success stories, as far as I picked this up because of booktok. I actually rated it 5 stars, and I binge read this because I couldn't put it down. It was such a good experience and I loved it, specifically because romance books for me are always such a hit or miss, because you guys know I've been very vocal about this. The whole miscommunication thing, for as realistic as it is as far as interpersonal relationships go, I really don't love that. It's so formulaic and it happens in every single book. It'd be okay if it had happened every few books, but the fact that it happened in every single one, it's just so tired at this point. And so anytime I find something that doesn't really have that and that resolves it very quickly of like, girl, this is really not where we want to go, so just vocalize things, thank you. I absolutely love those types of books. Funny you should ask. TikTok really did not lie with this one. I absolutely loved it. And in this one, we follow Chani, who is a reporter. She is a journalist, and she is appointed to write a profile on Gabe Parker, a superstar, a movie star, and somebody who tends to be a more reserved person, doesn't really give out interviews quite that often. And so it really is a huge honor and privilege in this landscape to have landed something like this. And slowly but surely, this interview descends into a weekend of madness where these two people get to know each other very intimately, where things get very messy. After this weekend finishes, they never see each other again up until after 10 years, where she gets the chance to reunite with said Gabe Parker and talk about exactly what happened on that weekend 10 years ago. And the reason why I love this book so much is not only because we really get to understand both of these characters separately, we get to see them and their lives, and we get to see these first-person sort of accounts as to what their lives looked like, what they look like now, exactly what has gone on in the past 10 years. We also get to see them obviously within the context of said interview and profile and exactly what went down in said interview. But then one of my favorite things about this book is that we get to see loads of commentary on the industry, about the movie industry, about Hollywood, about what it means to be an author, and how sort of well planned and thought out a lot of your image is, and what you're able to say and do or not do. And I think the author really sort of nailed that specific conversation that I think is, you know, relevant now more than ever, especially with the writer strikes going on and then actors joining that, and so many people being more and more vocal about the behind the scenes of being an actor, and it really not being an equal thing from one actor or writer to the next, to then being treated unfairly behind the camera, to also having agents that absolutely do not understand who you are. I think the book sort of does a great job at seeing all of those things, perhaps not as in-depth as it could have, but doing so in the context of like a 300-something page romance book. I think it did so quite well. It was really enjoyable. For me, it was a page turner, just because I really wanted to find out what happened on that weekend, what's going to happen now. Doesn't feature any miscommunication, which is great. I love that there's like this small moment and then one of the characters goes like, no, like you either give me an answer right now and like we talk about it, or this is not happening. But I'm like, I'm not gonna go away for a few days and then ponder too much and overthink about this, because it's simply not worth either of our time. And I absolutely love the acknowledgement of we're simply not doing this. And so love it so much. Just holding this in my hand brings me so much joy. I literally need to reread this book so soon. People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. I read this the year it came out, so not influenced by booktok, but still one of those books that booktok is absolutely right about. Anything really Emily Henry, save for perhaps book lovers that I didn't love as much, but Beach Read and People We Meet on Vacation are so good. But this one in particular really spoke to my heart. We follow Poppy and Alex, who have been best friends for a really long time, and these two people are polar opposites. Personalities, literally, stereotypically speaking, like shouldn't align with each other. Like she is very much the go, 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 wild sort of person who always wants to be out and about and exploring and is very adventurous. She's a travel blogger, if I remember correctly. He is a teacher, so he just likes to like stay home and just read his book, have his cup of coffee, very type A sort of person. Because they have very different lifestyles, they decide that they get 1 week a year where they go on a vacation together and they just have loads of fun, relax, and just spend time with each other in the way they want to spend time with each other. Except an ill-fated trip 2 years ago where something went wrong and they have never spoken since. And Poppy starts reminiscing about like when was the last time she was happy, when was the last time she was truly truly content, and so she brings up this proposition to Alex to go on one last vacation together in the hopes to amend everything, talk it out, and just be friends again, potentially. And before this, I had not really read a lot of friends to lovers. I think I tend to read a lot more enemies to lovers, hate to love, regardless of what genre we speak of. And so this was a nice breath of fresh air, and it made me really appreciate the dynamic of two people who already know each other, who already like each other, and who already have a lot of history together, getting into a romantic situation. And I think particularly as far as the situationship representation for those of us girlies who have experienced this, it really was a great thing to read. It almost felt like validating in a way of, you know, people who are always in your gravitational pull that you can't seem to get away from. Doesn't always mean that you'll end up with this person, but I think the exploration of that dynamic itself, and I think what a lot of people fear when it comes to friends becoming lovers, is so well done, because you're always kind of afraid of, but if we do get into a relationship where if something does happen between us, then our friendship suffers. It could potentially suffer if something terrible happens. I bought this paperback because I want to reread it and annotate it, and I will do it very soon, I think, because just holding this just brings me back to like simpler times. The poster child of booktok. Of course it had to be here. When I think of booktok and its inception, I think of three specific books. One of them is We Were Liars. The other one is The Atlas Sings by Olive Blake. This is one of those books that just overtook TikTok. Quite literally did become a TikTok sensation, to the point where an independently published book became a traditionally published book that subsequently led to every other Olive Blake book becoming traditionally published. It's honestly quite impressive how much of a domino effect it created for the author. Honestly quite lovely to see, and I did really enjoy this a lot. I read this at a time where I was like in a rut, where I wasn't really enjoying what I was reading. I had recently moved into my apartment, and I just kind of wanted to take things lower and to just enjoy what I was reading and enjoy what I was doing, and this took me back to one of my favorite shows, Heroes. And you guys know that anything that reminds me of Heroes in a book format is probably something I will enjoy. And so in this one, we have got the Alexandrian society that every year or every few years, can't remember exactly the dynamic of it all, recruits 6 different people to go through an initiation process to determine who will make it into this secret society and aid in keeping the knowledge of civilizations that are incredibly ancient, so that the knowledge can kind of be in good hands. And so with that, we follow our 6 candidates of this year who are enlisted by Atlas Blakely, and they are told that 5 people will be inducted into the society and 1 will be eliminated. And so it literally becomes a race against time and against each other in order to see who will make it and who will be left behind. And each one of them has a different power, has a different ability. There is rivalry between all of them, and it just again very much took me back to Heroes and this dynamic where having powers is both privilege in this world, and it's like a really cool thing to have because it'll help you when you need it, but it's also kind of a death sentence of sorts because you are targeted and there are bigger things at play that you could never really expect. And I love how it sort of has this sense of inevitability because it deals a lot with time and things happening at the right time in the right moment, and there being invisible hands playing puppet master in the background that you can't really see or can't really tell. Like, you always kind of know that there is something bigger at play. I personally really loved that it's just so juicy to see how it all comes together and how they get along or not with each other, and kind of see where their motivations and their morals lie. There are no morals. It's great. If there is a joy TikTok has brought me, alongside Haley, shout out to Haley fam, if there is any joy that was brought forward by these 2 entities, it was the joy of Lynn Painter. Better than the movies. In this one, we follow Liz and Wes as they become irrevocably intertwined with each other, because Liz has always wanted a romance that is better than the movies, something that is literally Harry Met Sally worthy. Like, she just loves romantic comedies and she kind of expects her love life to play out the exact same way. And when she sees that her forever crush Michael is back in town, she enlists Wes's help because Michael and Wes have hit it off, so that if her and Wes come up with a plan, it can kind of end up with her going to prom with Michael. And I love that the book goes from a lot of like innocence and naivete to slowly becoming more real and real for Liz as our main character. She has this very specific view of love and relationships and how everything must be sort of picture perfect and so almost like unreal and truly unrealistic. And I love that as the book goes along, she sort of discovers the beauty of what's right here, what is right here and what is right now, and what is actually tangible and what is real, not what we make up in our heads or how in love with an idea we are. And obviously that comes in the form of Wes in this book, because at the end of the day, she has truly made up this idea of who Michael is and what Michael can bring into her life and how this entire situation will play out. And it's not the fact that she likes Michael necessarily, she likes the idea of Michael. She likes the idea of a movie-worthy romance, but she really doesn't know Michael. So I love that it sort of ends up exploring this idea of settling for something that you think you know or something that you think you yearn for or want, and suddenly end up discovering like what's truly right for you. And it was just very sweet and just made me feel gooey and happy, and my little heart was just very happy while I was reading this. It was just very wholesome. And the last one is one I don't own physically, sadly, but I want to. I need to order it, and that is Kiss the Sky by Krista and Becca Ritchie. I did not think I was going to love this, but the fan art, the illustrations, the pitches, it all just made me want to read it more and more. The idea of an academic rivals to lovers and a reality TV setting and just wealthy family drama was incredibly enticing, and so I ended up reading it. Now this is a part of a wider series. There's like the Addicted book, and then you get Kiss the Sky and whatever the books after that are called. You just get to see a whole universe, but I started with Kiss the Sky because I particularly wanted to see Rose and Connor, also known as Caballoway's dynamic. I'd seen some quotes and I was like, I don't have my glasses on, just imagine I do. I was like, I need to see this. I need to see this very, very much. And so in this one, we follow Rose Calloway, who is a part of a very wealthy family. They are widely liked and known by the people, except then they are not because her sister is involved in this huge scandal, this really big drama that sort of makes her family fall from grace. And because she has got her own clothing line that she really wants to be successful, she wants to make a name for herself, that is because of her own achievements, she decides to enlist her sisters and their partners and her own partner Connor into a reality TV show that will show the inner happenings, inner world, everyday life of her family and herself. And this really just becomes family drama mixed in with rich people drama, the dynamic of a reality TV, and we get to see the producer firsthand, who is absolutely awful, by the way, but we get to see all of these things on page, which just makes the story so juicy and so good. And just seeing Rose and Connor interact as love interests is everything. When the book starts, they're already together. I believe we get to see the inception of their romance and their story in the Addicted series, sort of like in the background, secondhand, but we get to see them as they're already a couple, and these two people are very much their intellectual equals. The way they banter with each other, the way that they talk to each other, keep each other on their toes, and just give each other great advice in general, and keep each other healthy because they've just got high functioning brains and all that. It's just great. I absolutely loved it. I love how they both give each other their own space, and they admit and they recognize how brilliant the other is, and they never try to outshine the other. They work together in tandem so well. What Christian Grey thinks he is actually what Connor Cobalt is. Like, it's actually wild to me. I was staring, okay? I was staring at all of it. And that is it for today, friends. Those are the 10 books that I read because of TikTok or that are popular on TikTok. I personally really enjoyed and that I think are worth your time. If you read them now and you don't enjoy them, you can go blame TikTok, not me. I cannot be held responsible. Actually, I can, but I don't want the responsibility of that. So shifting culpability will be the move here. But I hope that if you do pick them up, you do. And if you've read them, do let a girl know down in the comments. Hope you enjoyed this video. Give it a massive thumbs up. If you did, let a girl know down in the comments if you've read these and you've enjoyed them. And if you've read any other popular TikTok books that you think are absolutely worth people's time, let us know too in the comment section, because I'm also curious to see like what other books you guys have read that you consider to be like peak entertainment, just peak. They're so good. Don't forget to subscribe down below if you haven't done so already for more bookish content. If you want to support the channel further, Patreon is always linked down below as per usual. If you want reading sprints where we just read together on a live show and we chat, or if you want a Discord server, next month we have got a readathon exclusive to Patreon. It's running all month long. We have a map and storylines and it's going to be so cool. If you do want that, all of that is linked down below, and there are a bunch of other perks, so do check it out if you want to. Alongside that, you'll be able to find all of the links to my social medias and my podcast called Talk and Talk, and just a bunch of other good stuff. So love you guys so much, and I will see you on the next one. Bye guys!